can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man #1 by Zeb Wells and John Romita Jr. And in this video we're going to try and answer a couple of questions about what the hell is going on with Spider-Man now. What dark secret is he keeping? Why have both Aunt May and MJ distanced themselves from Peter? And what exactly did Mary Jane do that has Spider-Man fans all over the world declaring that she is hoed Peter Parker? We're going to talk about all this and more right now, so without further ado, let's break down Amazing Spider-Man #1. Now that Peter Parker is back in the saddle, I'm not really going to go into all the chicanery surrounding that, but just know that Ben Reilly is no longer Spider-Man. Peter Parker has taken the mantle back up. So when we kick this comic off, Spider-Man has apparently done something that has made him a pariah among pretty much everyone who he's close to. We don't even really know exactly what it is. All we know is that somewhere outside York, Pennsylvania, there is a crater with a bunch of purple smoke coming out of it, with Spider-Man somewhere at the center of it. He's the only person left alive from whatever it is that he's done. He's unleashed something that has caused major devastation, and he lets out a guttural scream that lets you know that he is not okay. We don't really know exactly when this takes place. All we know is that it takes place sometime after Zeb Wells' Amazing Spider-Man #93 and Ben Reilly seemingly sacrificing himself for the quotey fingers greater good. And whoever it was that approached Peter and MJ at the end of that issue, someone bathed in gold light talking about a road of blood led to you, come with me, and Spider-Man not knowing who it is, and then a bright flash of light, no one knows what happened. A lot of people have been wondering whether or not this is some Mephisto level shenanigans, and I'll get to that here in a second. What we know is that everything in this book takes place 6 months after that event, and going forward from that, Peter Parker is no longer with MJ, and Aunt May has seemingly distanced herself from Peter. Peter keeps trying to tell her something, and May is just worried he's gonna tell more lies. She believes that Peter is keeping something from her, and she's right, he is hiding something from her. Well, a multitude of things, but in this particular instance, we don't even know what it is, and she doesn't either. Whatever it is he did has to do with something he stole from the Fantastic Four. As we know, the Human Torch asked him about it towards the middle of this book, saying that he has stolen something from the Fantastic Four. So right now Peter is on the outs with Marvel's first family as well. Not only that, but Peter Parker's former roommate Randy Robertson, who many may recognize as Robbie Robertson's son, even he is kind of on the outs with Peter Parker, though he is seemingly more friendly with him than anybody else is. At this particular point, what's going on with Randy isn't a major part of the story. The main thing we want to talk about is what's up with Mary Jane, because at this particular point we know Spider-Man is still Spider-Man. He's still going out and doing his normal Spider-Man things. However, he is constantly walking past MJ's apartment, and we notice that at one point she seems to notice this. And once again, this is 6 months after whatever happened at the beginning of this book. So I want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what I'm saying here. This is 6 months later, and now we discover that when Peter finally tries to call MJ, she tells him that he has to stop calling her. She's hiding in what might be a closet or a bathroom, trying to have a conversation with him that she doesn't want anyone else to hear. And we discover that she has a whole ass new boyfriend, a guy by the name of Paul. And if that wasn't enough to send every Spider-Man fan's hopes of Peter and MJ getting back together into the Shadow Realm, what will really do it is when we discover these two individuals have children together. That's right, MJ has two whole ass children that come running out calling her mommy. It is insane. I'm just like, what is going on here? Now let's go ahead and break this down. Like I said earlier, it's only been, as far as we know, 6 months, maybe more, because as we know, Marvel Comics as well as DC Comics to a certain degree work off of a sliding time scale, meaning that time in the comics doesn't pass the same way as it does in the real world. This is why you can have a character like, I don't know, Spider-Man, who first debuted in 1962, still be in roughly his early 30s in 2022. But all of that aside, the real question is what happened, because it's only been 6 months as far as we know. This is not enough time to have, one, started an entirely new relationship with this Paul character, and for two, it's not enough time to become pregnant and have 2 whole children. This has led many Spider-Man fans to wonder whether or not MJ was cheating on Spider-Man all the way up to this point. This part I don't think is the case, because one thing we have to remember at the end of Amazing Spider-Man number 93, right before the relaunch, MJ was asking Peter to move in with her. They had resumed their relationship, or at least were moving towards resuming their relationship at the beginning of the Nick Spencer run on Amazing Spider-Man. And over the course of that time, it was kind of a, okay, we're working towards this, we're getting towards this, to now finally they are back together. And after Zeb Wells took over shortly before the relaunch, yeah, she was like, hey, move in with me, let's move on to the next step, let's make this for real. And then boom, suddenly this golden figure steps in, and now it seems someone else is trying to ruin their relationship. Granted, I don't think this is Mephisto, because, well, for one, it's someone bathed in gold light, and Mephisto seemingly has better things to do right now in what he's got going on with the Avengers and his council of Mephistos from across 616 different Earths in the Marvel Comics multiverse. Though who knows, there's enough of them he could probably spare a few to go screw with Peter Parker. But yeah, that is incredibly crazy, and I just don't understand exactly what's going on here. But what I'm willing to gamble is that whoever this person is, they are the reason why this is happening. Something tells me that they have warped their relationship, and seemingly MJ knows something as well. She seems to be keen on what's going on here. She seems to have a life that she actually wants, but just not a life with Peter Parker. Maybe her mind has been wiped, because once again, in the Spider-Man One More Day story arc, Mephisto took Peter and Mary Jane's relationship, their marriage, the love that they have for each other, in return for saving Aunt May's life. I don't know whose life they had to save this time, but for whatever reason, here we are. Now, the other thing, and I think this is actually the more practical reason, is that maybe these aren't actually her kids. Now, the one thing that I will say is maybe a telltale sign, at least one of these kids is hers, is the daughter has the same red hair as Mary Jane. Now, it could all be coincidence. Who knows? It's comics. You never know. But I am willing to entertain the idea that maybe she just met a guy who already had children, and this is the fastest step-parent turnaround we've ever seen. But until further notice, the only thing I can go with is that this very likely has to do with what Zeb Wells introduced in Amazing Spider-Man number 93. I'm going to tell you right now, it has to do with that golden figure. Now, who is this person? It's very hard to say, but there are 2 characters that we are introduced to in this comic that I think may be tied to whatever this is. There's some kind of a debt collector that we see is hounding Peter Parker throughout this issue. Now, they say that they're from the McCarthy Medical Center, which is, for those who don't remember, Spider-Man just recently spent a lot of time in the hospital. It may actually just be that, or it could be someone just messing with him. The only reason I say this is ominous is because at one point Peter tells him not to hound Aunt May anymore, and the guy says, I have no idea what you're talking about, but that he'll be seeing him around. Now, another character we see is at the end of this, and it's a character who seemingly has Dr. Octopus hemmed up. We don't know who this character is, but I've been hearing some rumors around the mill that this might be some kind of a super adaptoid modeled after the Sinister Six. For those who don't know, adaptoids are these androids that can basically mimic the powers of whatever it is they're programmed to mimic. Whereas in the past, these androids have had the abilities to mimic the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. In Spider-Man's case, the Sinister Adaptoid was able to replicate all the abilities of the Sinister Six, though I don't think that's the case either, but you never know. This person does seem to have a very vested interest in messing with Spider-Man on levels even Dr. Octopus can't get down with, so who's to say? Another theory that crossed my mind was this could be somebody from the Ultimate Marvel Comics universe. I only say this because the text font used for their speech bubbles is eerily similar to what you would associate with Ultimate Marvel Comics, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I'm gonna go on a limb and say whoever this is probably isn't from the Earth 616 universe, especially if you take into consideration how much Dr. Octopus was messing with the multiverse during the recent events of Devil's Reign. Now, the other thing that's going on in this book that may be of interest to you is that the character Tombstone has taken up a bit more of a bigger role in the comics than he's had as of late. Right now, there's a war brewing between Wilson Fisk's other son, the Rose, who was recently resurrected, and now Tombstone, who seems to kind of be at the forefront of the whole mafia family that is taking control of New York in the wake of Wilson Fisk stepping down. Yeah, of course, Wilson Fisk's son Butch was supposed to take over everything, but it seems Tombstone is in control of things at this precise moment, and right now there's a war brewing between the two. Peter Parker has his hands full right now, on top of trying to cope with whatever it is he did 6 months ago that has put a rift between him and everyone that he cares about, and of course trying to deal with, Mary Jane being with this Paul character and having 2 children. He's now going to be caught in the middle of mafia gang warfare. Zeb Wells has literally stacked the deck against Peter in this case, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it, but I'm curious enough that I'll stick around and wait and see what happens. But anyways, let me know what you guys thought about Amazing Spider-Man #1. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.